What's up, bro?
What's up, man?
How you living?
Good, good. How about yourself? I'm excited for today's episode. That we kind of, without stealing your glory, um this gentleman here is one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing now. So I'm gonna just leave it at that until we get in and learn into something now.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I'm by far the most excited for this one because of the reasons that you said, but I don't want to spill the tea. So let's get started. So, as usual, friendly reminders. Our mission is to serve. So the more people y'all can put us in front of, the better. So the likes, the comments, that's dope. But our mission is to serve. So please share. We would sincerely appreciate that. All right. So who is our special guest? So our special guest today, his name is Kristofer Comeforo, right? And before I bring him in, um, this podcast is going to be a little bit different because this guy has played a huge role in me in my professional life and as a man, period, and also with Game 7. He unknowingly challenged a very, very hungry man, and I took one small statement from him and got with KG, and we took it and ran with it. So, Mr. Confero, let's bring him in. What's up, big guy?
Man, so good to be here, and just how far you have come. This really did feel like the start of Sports Center rolling in. I don't have the draft picks or whatever Schefter's coming in on the line, but happy to be here and happy to see where this is all gone.
Yeah, appreciate that, Chris. All right, so for quick context, Chris is currently a Harvard University Graduate School of Education doctoral fellow. Say that 10 times fast. Right? In educational leadership. He's a former principal in DC, a former teacher of the year, football coach, and we'll get to the ed tech stuff later. But everything education, that is Chris. So before we start to talk about Chris, what we do at Game 7 is we don't wait until you're gone. We give you your flowers while you're still here, right? So let's give Chris his flowers. So on March, I skipped the part. So Chris is a former principal, and in education, every so often, principals come in, they watch you teach, they give you feedback on your lesson and some tools and resources you can use to do better next time, more or less. Um, it is teaching isn't one size fits all, but the rubric is. But I really appreciated Chris because he did his best to take each person's skills and use them to fit into that mold. But on March 12th, 2019, we had a review of one of our observations. And this is what Chris said. Mr. Malcolm is making a concerted effort to build a positive classroom community. The class began with a session on social emotional learning in which students were discussing what it means to be prepared and the difference between motivation and drive. During this portion of the lesson, student engagement was high, and they were genuinely interested in the conversations. As the math portion of the lesson began, student attention waned, but Mr. Malcolm used strategies to redirect students back to the work, which were largely successful. So, as I always say, when I first started teaching, I noticed that if I would just talk to the kids as me, as Malcolm, they're locked in, absolutely locked in. There's no distractions, there's no talking, there's one accord, everything. But as soon as I get to math, I lose them. As soon as I get to math, I lose them. And I really, really, like, it got to a point, I just said, forget the math. Like, I'm going to just teach them what I know they need to learn. Right? I don't care about observations, X, Y, Z. But I noticed that after I started talking to them, I started getting them to do the math more. Right? But being a teacher, I knew I had to get to the math. But Chris already highlighted the things that I saw. It's like, yeah, I know I'm doing good because they're fully engaged. When I talk to them about motivation and drive, but when I talk to them about 2 times 8 to the third power or whatever, they're gone. But the key to that conversation was in our meeting, he said, so what you going to do about it? he didn't know that in my head I had this whole thing already lined up, and that I had just turned my life over to being great about 3 months before. Started reading every day, working out every day, started a business, learning about business every single day. No weekends, no nothing. 7 days a week. But to give that some more context, Chris used to be my AP at my first full-time teaching job, my assistant principal. A very, very high demanding school, in my opinion. A lot of politics and things that just happen in education. And I was just doing me, not being disrespectful and all that kind of stuff, but I teach in a unique way. And immediately I saw Chris embrace that, and I saw him do his best to find ways to get me to fit into the system without changing me, if that makes sense. And through time, I noticed the importance of having a good leader, especially in the educational system. So he left from AP and became a principal at a middle school. And I said I would never teach middle school, never in my life. But I said I'll follow Chris to do that. So I followed Chris there. And that year without him as my direct report was my hardest one by far. That's when I really, really appreciated him professionally, because I didn't notice that he was the brick wall between teachers and a lot of other stuff, and that was gone. And I was like, yo, Chris, if I come here, I got to be able to teach the kids about life. I want to be able to record it. I want to be able to talk to them as long as I got to talk to them. He was like, yo, do your thing. As long as you teach the math, you get the lessons done, do it. Now, when I came there, I didn't know that like kids were going to tell me like, I heard your words and you saved my life, and I was really going to commit my life to doing this. And as soon as I did it, Chris hit me with that. He was like, I didn't bring you here for math. I brought you here for your ability to build and fortify relationships. So use them. What you going to do about it? So, Chris, I just wanted to give you your flowers now to say that I appreciate you as a leader, and you are very, very gifted in that regard. I know you already know that, but I just want to tell you again, because I've seen you do it with all different ages, races, cultures, sexes, genders, kids, adults, and everything in between. So before we get into you, we just wanted to let you know that we do appreciate you. All right?
I appreciate that, man. No, it's one of those things where I've had that opportunity to see my students grow, right? And watching you grow as an educator, as a man, businessman, it's inspiring in a whole different way. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Mal.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And 2 weeks later, right after that, we had our first game day at HD in DC. So he was like an unofficial catalyst of things. All right, but enough about me. Let's talk about Chris. So in your childhood, Chris, and this makes, as I read your information, like it makes total sense. So you had two parents who were educators, and your dad was a high school and college football coach. So how did that experience as a child mold you?
It molded me a ton. I mean, having two parents that are in public education, that was a given, right? Like school mattered, but it was never a pressure. I did not have those parents that were putting my report card on the fridge or that were like hounding down the teachers to see how I did. They just really wanted me to like going to school every day and to enjoy learning. And I always had. To be honest, I thought everybody did until I started working in education, which is a whole nother story. But no, that grounding was huge for me. And then just in terms of leadership, being around my dad, going to 2-a-days in August, as a 6-year-old, being the ball boy, running water out, really saw how influence and leadership matters, and got to see him interact with kids, not only in the classroom, but on the football field at the high school and collegiate level. A lot of indirect lessons I learned along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that bleeds through you. When I read that, it's like I can see why you do some of these things effortlessly, because like it's all you know. And then also you're the youngest. So I'm the oldest, and now that I'm older, I always wish currently that I had an older brother or older sister, because a lot of times when I hit my head in life, it's because I went through it first, and my only people that I can relate to, like Just and G, we all going through it together. You know, so what kind of benefits, or were they not benefits of you being the youngest?
No, they were huge benefits, and like look at those age gaps. My brother was 13 years older, my sister was 10 years older, so it's like I had another set of parents as a proxy. You know, they were not that close to my age. You know, when I was 10 years old, looking at my brother is 23, like that's the coolest dude in the world. My sister was someone I could confide in ways that I couldn't to my parents, but she would also look after me for sure. So I think that's been a huge blessing. My brother and sister will make fun of me sometimes because, you know, they were born, my parents were first year teachers, and my dad will tell the story like, I was making $4,300 a year, had 2 kids. And then I came around, you know, 10, 15 years later, they were more established in their careers. Things were a little bit more settled. So I think that played to my benefit and granted me some privileges that even my brother and sister didn't have.
Yeah, 100%. I know whenever my next kid comes, it's going to be totally different than Nas. You know, because I'm a much more seasoned man. All right, so moving on. So just like me, I'm in this club with you. You got your first job at 14. What job was that?
I was scooping ice cream on the Jersey Shore. It was Hoffman's ice cream, still standing there as a tradition down there. My brother had worked there. At my time, my sister was still working there and going to college, so she was like the manager, and that's what I wanted. Like I just wanted to work. There too, I realized like I like service. I like, you know, Nick Saban has a quote. Leadership is hard, and if you don't want a hard job, go serve ice cream. And that's really a Nick Saban quote. And it's so true though. Like serving ice cream, like you just get to make people smile all day. It was a great job and learned a lot too, just about working hard and trying doing things the right way, seeing where people can make shortcuts and seeing those temptations and realizing the benefit of not taking them.
And we'll get into that more later. But I remember, especially the first year, I would see you. I'd be like, "Yo, Chris, did you go home? Like you're always here. You work too hard. You work too hard. You work too hard. Like yo, take some time off." So that's one thing. Like you didn't get to where you got because it was sweet. I know you worked for it. Like you would literally be there, and I would get there early. Like I'll be the first person in the building. You know, so you always come in a little bit later, but you would never leave. Like I don't think I've ever left the building at any school before you had. You know, so that hard work definitely paid off for you. So high school. So you did everything, and you took pride in not fitting into this little box. So you played sports, you was in AP, you was in honors, and you played the drums. And you already said you always liked school. Um, so how? That's well, question, kind of a tangent. Do you think that is as normal in a school for a student now as you thought it was before you got into education?
No, not at all. I'm actually studying a lot of that right now. Student engagement. What makes, and that was working with me. I think you know that was a big part of my drive. Like, how do we make kids love coming to school each and every day? I thought that we all liked school when I was in school, and you know, nationally right now, I think 44% of students report middle and high school as being not interesting. And that's, you know, nearly half of our students. And as you know, that's even more concentrated in certain schools that, you know, have a dearth of resources, where kids are already behind, where people might not show that they want to be working there. And what's crazy too is it increases over time. Every 5-year-old, like there's a light that over time quickly gets diminished, and the more time you spend in school, the more you start to not like it. And I really think that's a travesty.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so much. I guess I'm old now. The school today is just exactly like how it was when we went to school, except they have computers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the world is very, very different. Like one thing I would always say, and it's sad because it's actually dangerous. But I used to hate that we would take the phones from the kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like at the high school levels that we all worked in, as crazy as it is, it's kind of dangerous to let them keep their phones, right? I mean, but that's a whole class right there. But I think that they is 100% important that they learn how to use them. And that's the reason why Pop Smoke isn't here today, right? He went to school in New Jersey. He put all of his information on social media. Or every single fight that happens in the school is because of something that happened on their phone, you know. Or we'll see a kid truly have a traumatic, like withdrawal kind of experience because they can't get their phone. You know, I believe that phones and as we'll talk about later, technology need to be a part of school. And it's a whole nother podcast, but I think that we should have an additional way that we look for educators.
Oh, for sure, 100%. I remember being in a faculty meeting once, not at the last school we worked at, but where teachers wanted to take phones away. They were real upset about it. And when we were talking about it, I noticed a majority of staff checked their phones during the conversation, right? So like, why, like, when do we hold kids to these, like you said, what are we preparing them to do, right? Because in real life, you have that in your pocket. You have that temptation all the time. And it's only going to get more and more abundant, and it's going to get cheaper, and it's going to become everywhere. We do need to teach them how to use that appropriately.
Yeah, I agree 100% with how our world is headed. All it is going to be really technology, and if we are not allowing them to appropriately use technology, one, we're already putting them behind the scale once they go to school or in the workplace because they're not able to incorporate the appropriate technology. Another thing is you look at a lot of industries over the years, right? They have progressed and changed the way they've done things, right? The school system hasn't necessarily done that. It's still kind of the same lecture, be quiet, sit still. And that's something that really challenges the students, right? Because when you were a student or when I was a student, Chris, like the world is completely different, right? So I always think is it really important to incorporate new and innovative ways that students can learn and be engaged. When I was an administrator in Michigan, we actually had classrooms that were similar to like coffee shops where students, it was, I forget the exact words what it is, but students had no assigned seats. They had like bean bags, they had rolly chairs. It was just a bunch of things that allowed them to still be stimulated and still be engaged rather than sitting down at a normal desk. Obviously, some schools can't do that because that's budget wise, but I thought that was an amazing thing because the students were still engaged when they didn't have to just sit down, shut up, and learn, right? They allow them to be themselves. They can engage. They can get up and walk out the classroom and go to the bathroom without being harassed. It was just definitely interesting. Obviously, Michigan is a different dynamic than DCPS, right? But just to having it was called flexible seating. That's what it was called. So having that option of being flexible in terms of sitting or doing or having a space in class where you can truly just, if you need to move, having a spin chair and just spinning around doesn't mean it's distracting other people. That means just calming you down, but you're still focused. So I thought that was an awesome idea.
No, it's the truth. And I mean, this is all by design. Like, not to get too far in the history of schooling, but the way we do things is it's the Taylor model of schools. Right now, like everything from the bells to sitting in rows and organizing things by grade, that was designed by management experts, management science experts to prepare kids to go work in factories during the Industrial Revolution. And whether school's supposed to prepare you for a job or not, different conversation. But at least then there were factory jobs. We're still trying to prepare kids to go work in these fields that don't even exist. When you were just talking about flexible seating or working in coffee houses, that's how our generation works, right? Like, that's what Google looks like. We're not preparing our kids to go there. That most people right now can work perfectly fine from home or in a coffee shop and be just as efficient, but we're not preparing our kids to do that. And it's a cold world when so many of our kids get to college or beyond because we play this game at school that looks nothing like real life.
Great points. Great points. And that takes me back to another powerful moment with Chris that I always talk about. I told him when I gave him my first full keynote that I had talked about him a bunch. And I remember, Chris, I had spoke to the faculty 2 years ago. It was like right before a break or something. And I talked about trained leaders, transformational leaders. And I remember I talked about universal basic income, that it was coming. I didn't know it would be a stimulus, right? But things were coming. And also, yeah, that was still you about the coronavirus, that far more kids are going to get in danger from themselves in the city as opposed to the virus. But what I really was going to say is the way that I teach is unique. Like, I don't care where you sit. You could be standing up. I remember last time you observed me, I had a student who was laying on the desk. And I noticed that she would always lay on the desk. But through time, I learned that she didn't necessarily have a bed to lay on every night. So she was comfortable. And she was a 4.0 student. So she was paying attention. But I have, and my music is blasting. Like, you would come in my room and you would think I have no control. But I know exactly what's going on. The music is blasting, people standing up, people by the windowsill, everybody's working. And at the high school level, there would be like bigger observations where more people would come in, see me teach, leave feedback, X, Y, Z. And there was a time when Chris pulled me to the side. I'm like, Chris, I thought you was going to cry, bro. And he was like, yo, Mount, they've been on my back all year, but I've been fighting for you. But they love your results, but they don't really like how it looks. You know, like how it's too loud, the kids are all over the place, and you don't really dress like in a three-piece suit tie. But that day I gained so much respect for you. He was like, yo, I don't care. I just love that you get the kids to move. I'll work with you on these kind of skills, help you be you within there. But that made me think of that flexible seating. Like, I'm not here. Like, I just want you to teach. I want to teach. I want you to be able to learn. Like, you don't have to sit down when I say sit down. You don't have to stand up when I say stand up. Just do the work when I say do the work. But that was big for me because I've seen you. All right, you got to deal with me. Then right next door, you got the ultimate militant kind of teacher. Right next door, you got the teacher who has no control of what's going on. And then in the hallway, somebody's smoking. Then in the hallway, somebody else is fighting. I've seen you manage all of that and be present with each individual. So once again, more flowers and also highlighting your leadership, because I think I saw those things already, like the flexible seating and you got to be engaged, because I think it just makes sense, you know. But let's not get stuck there. Just wanted to highlight that. All right, so the motivated student. I didn't really understand it, so I can't wait to hear you explain this. So in 7th grade, you took some random series of tests to place on track for high school. You was placed on track for AP Math and Science, but not Humanities. When you asked about it, you were counseled out of those classes. So you took AP US History your senior year, the exam your senior year, without taking the class in protest. So that sounded like the ultimate nerd move. So
it's such a nerd break. I didn't know this stuff was going to be in text. No, but happy to talk about it. Yeah, and that's how I have feelings about placement tests in general and accelerated and honors courses and who could take them and who can't. I fought that in a very indirect way, but very forcefully a lot of my time at our last school. But it's also rooted in, like, one, the inequities I used to see every day at work, but then also some personal experience. I just remember in 7th grade getting ushered to the auditorium, having to take this random test, and based on those results, they were going to put you on track to end up in, you know, AP math classes by your senior year, AP science classes, and whatever. And I tested into the track to get me into AP math and science courses, but not the humanities-based ones. And I was confused. So I went in with my parents, asked about it, and they did like the typical school, talking a lot of jargon, like build fences and put barriers up to make it just harder to get what you want. And my parents didn't push it. They're like, all right, no, it's fine. Just go to school, do your best, you'll be fine. But it was really frustrating to me because, like, I was not allowed to take AP US History as a course because of some test I took in 7th grade. So I was like, what the hell? I'm taking the test. And I decided this like a month before the test. I was like, I'm going to take the test anyway. Give me the book. And I decided to sit for the test, and I passed the AP test. but I didn't take the class just to prove a point to myself that I could have done it if I wanted to.
Dope.
Definitely a nerd brag.
Hey, you had to let them know. And then once again too, I moved too fast, but it's so unfortunate like that. This kind of artsy student athlete has been so rare in our experience. Cause like, man, I know some super artsy kids, man, but they don't want to sing classical music. They want to rap, or they want to produce. Or I know some kids who can tell you every number in every basketball game, but because we can't teach general management, they don't know math, right? Or the athlete who can't get on the field because there's no interest in the classroom. So there's so many gifted kids that we're around all the time, but they just don't have the results. That's one of the most disheartening things that I see as an educator, and one of the primary sources of fuel for Game 7.
No, and that's so true. Everything from what you just said to your experience about being yourself as a teacher, the way that we look at school, unfortunately, is whoever you are, change so you could fit in this school, rather than, all right, let's rearrange things so that you coming into the school, you fit. However you come, you fit, and let it go. But unfortunately, we have so many factors in here that are saying, nope, it's got to be this way. It's got to be exactly like this. And for what reason? If you drill it down, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That resonates with me so well, because I've always had my nerd side. I love video games. I love comics. I just love learning. But I would mask that because I was this athlete. I didn't want people to notice. And then also in college, I wrote my senior thesis on the oppositional culture theory. And that says, especially students of color, when they're around other students of color, they intentionally perform worse because they do not want to be labeled as white or different, right? So that's a huge thing that a lot of our students in DCPS, are going through, right? And the study that I did, it went from lower a school with just all minorities, then it was a mixture, and then it was a private school. So all the schools with the mixture, it really didn't matter, right? The schools that were private schools, the students just excelled, right? Because they cared. But the students who were in the schools like DCPS, they did worse because of, just like you said, those labels that are created so they can fit in versus being themselves. And I think that's a parallel in society, with a lot of our younger generation people, in terms of the expectations of what they think they should be versus what you can be.
And that's powerful too, because most people don't know that schools today are more segregated now than they were during segregation. Like, that's absolutely crazy. Like, that's crazy to me. And like, even when you go to the ones that I've seen, I obviously haven't seen all, but a lot of the diverse schools are still segregated. Like, I would teach like regular math in the morning, 99% black. And the advanced classes in the afternoon, not 99% black. Not one race at all, but far more diverse. But my grade level math students would always say, Mr. Malcolm let all the white kids into this class. He let all the, I'm like, yo, I ain't have nothing to do with it. And I know that there's test scores involved and all those kind of things, but that goes back to what Chris just talked about. Like, why do you have to take a test to be able to get into a challenging class? Like, yo, even if you failed it, say you took an advanced class, you failed, then you took it again, you're still right on pace, And then also the kids are building an image of, oh, this kind of intellectual looks like this. This kind of athlete looks like that. This person is a troublemaker. This person is good at math. This person is good at science, or whatever the case may be. And that's tough for kids to have to see that. And then also for us, where I have to take a step back too, in terms of like the diversity and the segregation and stuff, we all have very, very unique educational experiences that are or were nothing like the ones that we teach and lead in, you know? Because when I got into the school system, it blew me away. Like, and I'm very in tune with my culture. I know exactly what's going on outside the building, but in the building, like, it absolutely blew me away. And my definition of school was petty, was grad student and undergrad, 4.0 student in graduate school. Like, school wasn't a joke, you know, and even people who didn't do well, it wasn't a joke. So, Chris, I got a question for you as a leader. Do you feel that the fact that obviously most teachers are educated, and let's talk public education, they teach in a place where education isn't necessarily valued? Is that something that holds teachers back from being as effective as they can be?
Because they're not valued as an educator?
No, because like they came from a background to where those around them usually, and especially them themselves, they never played around with education. It was always something very, like you said, I thought everybody loved education until I started teaching, right? So do you think that is something that holds us teachers back? Because most of us—
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're right. Because, right, your point is that you succeeded in this system. So just keep doing the system and try to get more kids to succeed in the system because it worked for you. And that will work for some kids. But, yeah, we don't really challenge the system, right? It's back to this idea of we try to squeeze kids to fit into the system rather than how can we change the system to meet the kids. And it's not just teachers, too. It's everybody went to school, so everyone has an opinion on what it's supposed to look like. And how it currently works, it works for some students, it doesn't work for other students. And the richer you are, the better it works for you. The lighter you are, the better it works for you. And that power is just going to keep, that's where the power is, so that's going to keep perpetuating that system. So we really do need to start to challenge, like, what are we trying to do here? And how can we make it work for everybody?
Yeah. It makes me think of, like, you know how almost always the best athletes are horrible head coaches? Michael Jordan is hard, cannot be a head coach. Larry Bird, he didn't do too well. It's you, or like it's the backup quarterback that turns out to be the great.
Or Steve Kerr coming out of nowhere.
Yeah,
making,
you know, like, those who had time to see the game, and like Michael Jordan, just drop 50. You know, like everybody can't do that. I always think about that as an educator. Like maybe if we had more C and D students who turn out to be adults that care for kids, maybe they should be in the classroom too, because they're not thinking about it the way that a nerd is thinking about it in a room full of students who are not nerds, but still want to learn and grow.
That's so real. I'm actually doing a project right now with some classmates where we're actually presenting to the U.S. Department of Education on how to diversify the teacher workforce. And one of the things that we're studying is just the barriers to become a teacher. Like, those tests are hard for weird reasons. Like, I'm all for, like, have a test, hold the bar, like, but like they're like oddly difficult about things that don't matter. We make it hard to get into the gig, and it's not paid very well. It's not respected very well. So like people don't come into it. But I think you're exactly right. Get people that weren't the most successful in the system, but really care. And because I think we need that diverse perspective about how we're going to change things and support these kids.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, so let's move on to college. So Boston College, y'all won everything in hockey. Basketball went to the Sweet 16, and you got to watch Matt Ryan as the quarterback. So don't get yourself in trouble, but give us two highlights from college. Give us two highlights.
Man, it was just a great experience overall. I'll say the motto for Boston College is men and women for others. It's a service-oriented institution. So like community service was a huge thing. So I did a lot of community service on the campus. They had a non-public school for students with very severe special needs. And I volunteered a lot there. Yep. Went down to New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina relief. Like that was a part of the culture. And I really appreciated that because it was valued to give back to the community. And then, just otherwise you just hit on it. Like sports were great when I was there. you know, Matt Ryan, Luke Kuechly, like those guys like were in class. Anthony Costanzo like was a biochemistry major, and so was I, and there were only like 15 of us. And just like being around these people that were great athletes. And Boston, I mean, I'm up here again now. It's not my favorite city, but it's something to be said too, because like the Celtics won with the big three, Patriots were winning, Red Sox won. Like everything was going well in Boston at the time. It was a fun place to be.
Dope. We got a mentee. That's what Corey is, right? KG? Yeah. A mentee that plays linebacker up there that went to Woodbury Forest and Petty. He went all three. All right. So the lab. So you worked in the lab and you were given graduate level responsibilities early. So were you an undergrad doing graduate level stuff?
Yeah, and that was just by chance. I wanted to study abroad. It threw off my whole like course schedule. So I had to end up joining a lab to get some credits done. And it was a new lab that was forming. And the guy's like, "You want to work with me?" I was like, "Yes, please. I'll do anything." Thinking I was just going to be like washing out beakers and stuff. And he gave me like full projects and let me go. And I think that was huge. That and also working in the ice cream store, like I became a manager of like 2 ice cream stores by the time I was 16. And like just getting responsibility when I didn't think I was ready for it. I always say yes to those opportunities because I see my own growth in them.
Mm-hmm. So what did you study?
Biochemistry.
Biochemistry. So were you ever actually a chemist before you got into education?
So I worked in a lab for sure, but decided not to fulfill that route. I talk too much. Labs are pretty quiet. Also, like the thing, like Moderna, who's like made the mRNA vaccine, like that's a huge deal. But like that was like an 8-person company in Boston, like not too long ago, and that was the type of company I would have worked for. The issue though is you can go work for a company like that and do research your whole life, and nothing may ever pan out. Like nothing you might make nothing useful for society, or you make like COVID vaccine and like you feel really good. I couldn't live a life where I was working really hard and not knowing if it was going to matter or not.
Yeah, gotcha. No purpose. No purpose. We have something we call levels of why. You got survival, status, freedom, purpose, right? And that makes sense for you. Like you felt it early, as did I. You didn't want to do all that for no return. But that stock does have a lot of volatility, so you could have made some bread that way too while you were still there.
I know.
That's the only reason I know about them. All right. So this kind of relates to what we talk about in education, but you felt like that your school didn't really prepare you too well for the tough college curriculum, but you use that as a chip on your shoulder. So every year I work with freshmen. I pull up an old article from about DCPS about how difficult of a time that the valedictorians have once they make it to school. And I use that to teach the kids, like, don't shoot for a 4.0, shoot to leave out of here the best that you can, because the 4.0 is not the cap, you are the cap. So a little kid just walked in who's going from 12th grade to Harvard with you from an urban school. Give him some advice. What would you tell him or her?
Just be curious. And also like what you realize around being like at different schools, and I learned this at BC, but it took me a second, is like everyone that sounds smart isn't necessarily smart. So don't get intimidated by that and just ask questions. Just why? Like, how come? And if they actually know what they're talking about, they're going to be able to explain that why question in a way that makes sense. If they can't, that's on them. But don't lose that either there. Just keep learning, keep going out. Also, just expand your circle. Don't just talk to the same type of people. Learn, get diverse perspectives, get different ideas. I think that's a big part of things as well.
Yeah. Well said. And
Yeah.
something that go ahead, you got it, KG.
No, that last part resonated with me so well. Just talk to different people in college, especially my first about year and a half. I only hung out with athletes, other than like if I had a class with someone else any party, athletes. It wasn't until my sophomore year when I broke my foot and I had to have surgery, so I couldn't play spring ball, is when I was in doing a couple of class, like stats class for my social major, where I like hung out with some like different people. It was like, yo, like I've been on this campus for almost 2 years, and all I do is talk to the same type of people with me. Right now, I've made connections that could potentially help me down the line simply because I opened up my mind into who I could actually talk to instead of just staying in stereotypical, oh, I'm an athlete, I'm only going to talk to athletes. That was a huge part of me. And it actually broke the barrier at our school a little bit, because for a little bit, the fraternities and the sports team would just have a little beef. You know how that is on college campuses. So once I started hanging out with them, it just showed everyone's like, yo, like just because they're not an athlete doesn't mean they don't bring value to you as well.
And one thing we highlight to parents of kids who are students, that your parenting style is a huge determinant on the kind of student that your son or daughter is. Right. So there's a couple of different styles. You got the drill sergeant parent, right? What I say goes. Like we're in a meeting where student X did something and Mama Y is there, and every time student X talks, don't talk. Right? We don't even get a chance to explore their thought process so we can help him or her. Right? So that's the kid in class who never asked a question because the teacher did not ask you to ask a question. Right? You're doing what you're told. Or you have the laissez-faire parent. You can do whatever you want. Right? That's the kid who usually does whatever they want. Or you got the helicopter parent. They're on your back all day, every day. Mr. Malcolm, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Mr. C, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Right? But the key parent, the ideal one that we believe is the consultant parent, right? To where there's discussion, right? So Nas, why didn't you do the dishes? Oh, Dad, I had to go to the bathroom, then I got distracted by my game. Boom, boom, pow. Yo, well, next time, no game until you do the dishes, bathroom or not. Boom, he learned, right? Or when you repeat the mistake, oh, it's okay. But now the first time it's a mistake, the first time it's a mistake, second time it's a choice, right? So that takes it to a whole nother different thing. And then he'll grow up learning that he can make mistakes and ask questions. So I think that's also something that should be a part of the school system. Is families, is parenting, right? You only have your own kid. You can't tell somebody else how to, raise his or her son. But parenting is actually a thing like that can be studied and you can learn and grow. But especially in the Black culture, that's like the ultimate sin. Don't tell me how to raise my son or daughter. It's like y'all got all this wealth of information. You got one kid. I'm around 700 every day. Like, let me give you a little bit of information. Let's get to the good stuff, the career. So, one of the highlights: watching kids change, grow, and develop. That never gets old. Same for me, but for me, I feel like I see that way, way, way less than I should. Ever since I met you, Chris, I told you I'm scared for a lot of the kids to walk across the stage because they're just not prepared. Some of them by choice, but a lot of them not by choice. Even the ones who did very well, they got prepared for 1984, but we're in 2021 now. So what drives you to make the changes that you're doing in your life to help more people change and grow in terms of students? What's driving you?
The L's, all the losses, that still keeps me up at night, right? Like the quote on there, it's true. It doesn't get old and it's exciting but it's not what motivates me. It's all the ones that we missed along the way. Some are gone forever. Too many are. Some are just got the degree, like you said, got their diploma, and now what? And because the whole time I saw so much potential in each and every one of them in different ways, but they all had tons of potential. And so many didn't. And like, I was working really hard. Like you said, I wasn't going home. So that's really like where I'm at now and where I've been is like, how do we get better at this? Because we can't keep doing it the way we're doing it. Because we in the schools we work at, we lose more than we win sometimes.
Yeah. And like you said, losing lives. Like Like I always tell my girlfriend now I'm an OG teacher because everywhere I go in the city, I see a former student. And like my heart hurts sometimes, man. And that's the primary motivator behind Game 7 is helping people find reasons bigger than school, bigger than the typical, because life is going to get hard, and you got to have the skills to be able to persevere. So I hope you're not in trouble for me putting this on there. But chasing numbers. So my first year under you, we had the best numbers like in history. Like green was good, we had all blue. Every single thing you hit blue. But you knew from the beginning, like I was conflicted on that stuff. Like I don't care about no numbers, I just want to help. So what was your turning point to where you learned how to fulfill your purpose, but also be well in your job position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say like numbers do matter, right? Like you, and maybe I approach this too much like a football coach or whatever. Like you still want to win, and I still want my kids to be able to read really well, and I still want my kids to be able to pass any test anybody else's kid can pass. Like that, I still all believe that's true. I used to think that that was enough, and I think that's where my problem was. And what I realized is like you can do all those things, right? Like we had all of our indicators had to make a new color. We weren't green anymore. We were going blue. And that was, there were a lot of good things about what we were doing, but like I knew in my heart and you knew in your heart that not every kid was prepared for life, let alone 10th grade. So really trying to think is like, if you can't look at each and every one of those kids and feel confident that like when you take your hand off the bike, that they're going to be able to keep pedaling and go forward, then that's not enough. And I think like, unfortunately, we hit a movement like that we came up in the education like world where like accountability was king, and the pendulum's going to swing the other way a little bit, which I think is good. There needs to be accountability to something. I agree, but we had like an unhealthy focus on metrics, and they typically weren't always the right metric.
Yeah, there you go. That's the key. Numbers are good, but I think the right thing has to be measured. Right? Yep. Like on the basketball court, to me, the most important number for a player is your plus or minus. When you're on the court, are you winning or do you make your team lose? Points, rebounds, all those things add in, but you might just be a defender. You're not going to get any stats, but the person you're defending is not going to get any stats, right? It's all about the plus or minus. And I think that's something, speaking for every teacher in the world, that we all struggle with. It's like, yo, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose this. Or if I do hit this number, even though it's not really what I really want to hit, I get a big bonus. So now I put my own personal life in the mix with my classroom. So how do I do that? But once again, that's a big systematic thing. So you said working in DC, especially at Anna, which we all know very intimately, we lost a lot of kids to violence each year. This made me reevaluate the purpose of my work and the role I wanted to play in it. So before I respond, we had a former student I always talk about, so I say his name, Willie. And I always talked about Willie because he was one of the main students saying, yo, Mr. Malcolm, you need to quit teaching. You need to be a motivational speaker and a therapist. Because I don't want to do this math, sugar, honey, iced tea, none of that. But if you talk to me, I'll do it. But you can't be a teacher. You got to talk to me. You got to talk to me. You got to talk to me. And he was a very, very bright kid. And I'm not saying that just because he's gone. And he was a hell of an athlete. But losing him, that hurt me a lot. And I kind of, maybe it's my competitive nature, but like put some self-blame on myself. Like, what could I have done more to help? Like maybe if I would have took the brunt from Chris and the other principals because I was talking to them, I could have took that L, but maybe that would have been that piece of advice that made him not go with his friends that day, or that made him pay attention this other day. And that's tough. So how is students losing their lives? How has that affected you as an educator and as a man overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's been big. And my favorite Willie story, just because you brought him up, I remember Willie and his mom came up to school. It was the day after grades got locked in, and he would always, like you said, a real bright kid, was fine academically, but like one of his grades slipped like real low. I forget what it was. And the issue was his mom's car got towed and all of his old book bag was in there. And like he told the teacher and the teacher didn't believe him or didn't give him the benefit of the doubt. I forget what happened. I didn't know any of that until like a week later. Willie and his mom like came running through, like, and it was on a school holiday. No one was there. They came in with this backpack full of like completed work because she had just gotten access back to his car. And like he's like, I don't even care if the grades are done. I wanted you to know that I did this. And like I was like, but I believe you did it. And like I made sure the teacher got it and it got reflected. But he was a great kid, great athlete, and an old soul. That kept me grounded for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I truly believe if he wanted to, he could have been a comedian.
Yeah, he saw things that teenagers didn't really see. He saw and understood exactly like what was happening and the motivation behind everything. But like unfortunately, Willie wasn't, the first student I had lost, and I actually, for the first time ever, I was working through some stuff in one of my classes, and I wrote down every single child that I had lost over my time, and it was 24 in 11 years, right? That's crazy. And I loved working at Anacostia, but one of the things that was playing out in my psyche was I was starting to think that it was normal, right? Like I was like, yeah, it's like 2 a year, like, and like I was like, that's not. Chris, like, don't let that get programmed into your mind. Like, that's not normal. And it was really starting to eat away at me. But it really makes me think about like the importance of what we're doing. I think what you said, reflecting on like, could I have done more? I do that too. I don't think that's the healthiest way to process it because you can't take that blame on, but it's hard not to when you really care about the kids. But it makes the time that we do have with them that much more purposeful. And a lot of our kids in a lot of communities need more than just the 40 minutes a day you got with them in math class, right? They need something to do after school. They need something on the weekend. They need something to look forward to. Because if not, life can catch you quick.
Yeah. And that's not normal, as you said. Like, I thought about that too. I haven't been in there as long as you, but there's been a good 10 students who I've been connected to in some form or fashion who have already passed away. But it also makes me think too, it's cliche, but you never know how you're impacting somebody and the impact that you're having on their life. Like something that also always sticks in my mind, there used to be a dean who was always right outside my classroom my first year. And he passed away. And I went to the bathroom one day. This was a Friday. And he was rubbing his head. I'm like, yo, you good, bro? And I saw him texting. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. It didn't look right. So I come back and he's still rubbing his head. And he's texting. Like, you all right? But it just didn't look right. He's like, I'm good. But I saw him texting like frantically. I was like, all right, maybe he arguing with his girl or something. Let me mind my business. But then I got a call the weekend he passed away. Just like that. Or you get the call like so-and-so passed away. And now it's like, I don't want to say it's regular, but like I haven't quite accepted it as normal. But when I first walked into a school building, I was never expecting for my students to be down.
Yep.
And that's a tough pill to swallow. But before we go, I really want to I want to learn more about your ed tech ventures. So what you got going on with ed tech?
Yeah, so that came about this year. One of my classes, we studied the history of educational reform over the history of the country. And at the end of the class, my professor, like the final assignment is like, all right, you got to make a big bet. What are you going to bet on to change the whole system? You got one move. What are you going to play? And I was just like sitting and thinking about it. And like what I kept coming down to is this idea of like most kids don't like being in school every day. Most kids don't like being in school every day. And the stuff that we put in front of them is draining. Like like the most energetic kid in the cafeteria will like deflate as soon as they hit the classroom door. and like, but there's still really important things that you need to learn that you don't, and you have to learn how to get through things that you don't like to do. I understand that, but really starting to think about like, how do we put things on kids' desks that are really engaging, that kids really like to do, that keep them captured and wanting to come back for more. And like I was thinking through like different programs, different curricula that can help get you there. But at the end of the day, like every kid has different interests, different needs. And if you want to really meet every single kid where they are, we call it differentiation, right? Or if you want to give feedback to every single kid specifically on how they're doing, it's not that you, Malcolm, don't know how to do that. You just don't have the time. You probably see 125 kids every single day. You don't have the time to do it for every single kid that you see. So as we kept drilling down in this protocol, like what can work, at the end of the day, there's no way to differentiate and give every kid exactly what they need without using technology. Now, I don't believe in ed tech in a way that it can replace teachers, because education is and always will be deeply relational. You need to have that person-to-person connection. What I want to do is take the burden off the teachers of creating highly engaging, high-quality content that kids automatically will like, that will be responsive to them, that'll be not too easy, not too hard, just what they need. I want to take that burden off of teachers. And right now, the curricula that we give to teachers, it just isn't good. Like, and the stuff that's ed tech is just worksheets that they made in the 80s that are now just online, multiple choice questions. Like, I want to actually design something that's interactive, that meets students where they are, where they're actually producing things and making things that will be relevant to the future they want. So long story short, I'm working with two other guys on the project. One's a former principal, and he actually used to work for Disney. He's a super creative dude. He was a principal in Massachusetts. He was down in Florida and Arizona. And the other gentleman we're working with actually ran an AI speech recognition software company in the 90s, which turned out to become Siri and all that AI, artificial intelligence. So he really understands the tech side of things. My other partner and I really understand, like, what does a good curriculum and teaching and learning look like? And we're trying to put this all together into something that puts the teacher at the center, that takes all that instructional, not all the instructional burden off of them, but all the monotony of just getting kids like the exact right assignment in front of them, making that easy for kids.
That's dope. There goes your ticket. I know
hey, we'll see.
Nah, bro. Like I know you're gonna do it. Like you made for that. You made for that. I always tell people because I always talk about you. When people who don't know you, I pull up like Simon Sinek. I was like, this is who he reminds me. You know, you got the mind, you got the personality, you got the marketing, naturally, all those kind of things lined up. But we got some more flowers for you. Let me make you big so we don't put it on your face. You were such a great partner at Anna because of your great intentions, your humble spirit, and your willingness to go the extra mile. Just here to say Comeforo is dope, Miss G.
Miss G, look at that, Malcolm. Thank you, Miss G, and I really appreciate that. I hope you are doing well. It's crazy. You really got a professional little enterprise here going. So that was a big surprise. Thank you, Miss G.
Slowly but surely. Have you ever seen Impact Theory, Chris?
Do
you know who Tom Bilyeu is? Oh man, you're gonna love it. All right, I'll text it to you. But I know we're running short on time. Next time we have you back, it's gonna be more like Impact Theory.
Okay.
I think you're gonna be hooked. But Tom Bilyeu is he's the CEO of Quest Diagnostics, I think the company is.
Yeah.
And he's actually a former teacher. Now he's a billionaire. He just adds value now. I guess he's bored, got a lot of money. Just interviews a lot of people, and he has a lot of like on a mission like you to truly help people using a lot of technology. So the next time you come back around, it's going to be much more Impact Theory. We're going to be better. You're going to be better, and we're going to show everybody what you made. All right. So make it happen.
I'll be back. Yeah, for sure.
Way too much not to make it happen. And we just want to say thank you. We appreciate your time. And go out there and do it, bro.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate just like being in your presence, you, KG, just watching this go from an idea and you really tapping into what you were already good at and making that scale and get out to as many kids as possible. I love it. It's needed. Everyone talks about, this last school year, COVID and the dual pandemics and like everything. All that stuff was already there for the kids that we were working on. Like these, and and we've been talking about it, and you've been doing that work. But now it's just even multiplied. So keep doing the good work. Don't slow down. I know you won't. But just like I wouldn't leave the office some days, make sure to keep taking care of yourself for the good of the people.
All right. Well.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the club. Everybody tells me that. Malcolm, slow down. You need to slow down. Slow down.
Hey, KG, you see some grays in there? You see some grays in there?
Oh, of course I see those grays, man.
They coming in. That just means I'm getting smarter. That's all.
Here he go. Here he go.
All right. Appreciate y'all. See y'all next time. Peace out.